everyone, and welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new here, my name is Thea, and for those of you who are returning, thank you so much for clicking on another video. So today we're going to be doing something that I started doing a couple months ago. It's making your own vegetable broth from the scraps you already have. And there's two ways to do this. You can use your Instant Pot, which I'm going to do, or you can do it on the stove. So homemade vegetable broth is really good for substituting for things you would use chicken broth or beef broth for, or when you're making a soup or anything like that and you want to add just a little bit of extra flavor. Throw in some vegetable broth and it really changes the flavor of it. That's what we use now. It's one of those things that if you cook a lot will come in very handy, because you're making it with stuff you already have, more than likely. I like to put in carrots, onions, garlic, and occasionally potato scraps if I have those, if I'm not composting them, because some of my vegetables go towards compost now. I also like to put in red bell peppers if I have those scraps, and you stick it in a pot with some water and just let it boil for like 30 minutes, and then you have homemade vegetable broth after you strain it, and you don't have to spend any extra money, and it's a really quick and easy way to save a little bit of money. And it also helps reduce waste if you prefer to do, if you like reducing waste and things like that, because you're not buying as many processed things, because they are still processed, they're made still by a factory and things like that. And then you're also reducing the amount of sodium that's in it, you're reducing the amount of preservatives that are in it, you're making it yourself, so you know everything that's going into it because you're using vegetable scraps. What I like to do when I'm cooking is I have a bowl right beside me, and as soon as I'm done cutting or anything, I'll put it in there, and then I'll divvy it into compost and vegetable broth. And I just keep those in plastic bags in my freezer. I use freezer bags, and I just keep them in there until the vegetable broth bag is full, and then I'll make a batch or two of vegetable broth depending on how many bags I have. I'm not sure how many I have right now, so we're gonna have to go look, and then we'll start making it, and I'll take you along with me. So this is what I'm currently using today. Like I said, you can just put all your scraps in a freezer bag and let it go. I have some bell peppers, some onions, carrots, and then I recommend labeling these so that way you know what it is. So this is just vegetable scraps. Same with these. And so we're gonna stick this, and don't worry about like the freezer burn part, those are fine too to put in. So we're gonna stick this in a pot with some water and get to cooking. So I completely forgot that the pots that I was going to use, my Instant Pot insert and then my big pasta soup pot, they're both in the dishwasher, so I'm just gonna make a really small batch now to show you, then just take this and just multiply it, like double it when you make a big batch or anything like that. So you're just gonna dump the bag in, and this is fine. It's got onions, carrot peels, there's a bunch of stuff in here. Till about this, because you want to be able to top it with water, and you don't want it to overflow because this is going to simmer. You can also add celery to this. I think I have a few stalks in here. We personally don't like the taste of celery, so we don't use it very often. But if you like celery, then add it. I would only recommend adding the celery, carrots, onions, and things like that. I wouldn't recommend adding like eggplant or bok choy or like leafy greens or anything like that. It just won't turn out good and it'll make it bitter. I'm going to turn this on to high, and you're going to want to use a pot that has a lid so that way you can kind of put it on there like that. But I'm going to go ahead and season this right now. So I'm going to throw in 2 bay leaves, 2-ish bay leaves, about a teaspoon of garlic pepper. And this is just what I personally like to add. You can add whatever you want to this, whatever your flavor palette is. I know thyme, rosemary, those are popular, but I'm just going to add a little bit under 1/8 of a teaspoon of some ground sage. And this is for this batch, so If it was a bigger batch, I would probably double these herbs, but for just this small pot right now, this is what I'm doing. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Because I'm just looking to increase the flavor in this. I'm not looking to make it salty. I can always add salt when I'm cooking the recipes that I'm using for this. So now that it is boiling, and stir it. Make sure nothing's stuck to the bottom or stuck together. And then turn it down to a simmer and put the lid on, partially covered it. So it can still vent, but it's not completely boiling off. And then you're going to set your timer for 45 minutes and just let this simmer just like this, stirring occasionally for 45 minutes. And then we'll be right back after that. So after 45 minutes, this is what it looks like. I'm going to take out the bay leaves, because if you let bay leaves steep, they become really bitter. And you're going to want to remember how many you put in there. And bay leaves just kind of enhances the natural flavor of it without adding salt or anything. And then don't forget, this isn't supposed to be salty. You're not supposed to be able to taste the salt. It was just enough to enhance the flavor. Because if you add this to soups or gravies or something, you'll add salt to them. And you don't want to add salt to a recipe and have a salty broth, because that is just not a good combination for anyone. So I'm going to let this sit for a minute or two while I get the rest of my stuff set up. And I'll be right back. And what I like to do, you do not have to do it this way, this is just my personal preference, is I like to drain this in a big colander to get all the big chunks out. And then I'll run it through a fine mesh sieve after I do that. Slowly and carefully dump it. And you're gonna want the bowl big enough or the colander small enough that all the holes are covered by the bowl. Okay, then I'm going to take my spoon. I stirred this probably 3 times while it was boiling or simmering. So I mean, you don't have to do it a whole lot, because you don't want to stir it enough to where it disrupts it. Just enough to where you can get and make sure that all the stuff doesn't stick. And I like to take it and kind of do this, just to make sure all the last bits of the broth are out. And then these are kind of useless after this. If I remember correctly, you can compost these, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm probably just gonna toss them. Ooh, that bowl's hot. I'm gonna put it back in this one because this is already dirty, and slowly pour it through the sieve to get rid of anything last. See this stuff on the bottom? You kinda wanna do your best to keep that from getting into the broth. It won't affect the quality, it just kind of looks weird and doesn't look that good. But if it does happen, you can just strain it, or you can just shake it. And see how it caught the last little bits. So I'm gonna let this sit on a hot pad on my counter for probably 15 minutes or so, just till it cools down, and then I will be right back. So this is how I have found works best for me personally. What I do is I pay attention to what I'm going to make throughout the week, and if I don't need a lot of broth, then I'll just put a little bit in my fridge to use whenever I need it, and then I will freeze the rest of it. So I'll freeze this container and this container. You can freeze these, just leave a little bit of space up at the top and it'll be fine. Even if it does crack, you can still set it in the fridge overnight in a bowl and it'll just drain in that bowl and it's just fine. And so these I will take out and let it melt in the fridge overnight, and then dump it in here when this is empty or almost empty. And then these are little vegetable broth cubes. If I just need like the tiniest little bit of vegetable broth, I have these. And once these are done freezing, I like to pop them out after a day or two and put them in a baggie and just keep it in the door of my freezer. but this is how I make my own homemade vegetable broth. It's really, really simple, and it's a great cost saver. And if you have an Instant Pot, then you can do really, really large batches in like 5 minutes, I think is what the Instant Pot is. Or it might be 15, I can't remember. But you can do large batches of them and then just freeze large batches of it, and you never have to buy vegetable broth, which is amazing. You just have to remember to thaw it out. But yeah, so since this is glass, it's going in the fridge, and then these are plastic, so I'm not worried about them if they break. But yeah, that is it.